Well, welcome, beloveds, to another episode of The Reclamation, a space where we remember, reclaim, and return home to ourselves. Today, I have a very soft and possibly triggering episode for you. It's about grief. And it's about that sacred ache deep within that transforms us. I am your host, Paula Collins, Magdalene Priestess, intuitive sound healer, and spirituality mentor. And today, we are leaning into the soft and often misunderstood teacher, grief. And I like calling it our teacher because we have so much to learn about ourselves as we go through the process of grief. Whether it's the death of a loved one, the loss of a relationship, the loss of a version of ourselves, or even grief we carry for the world, this emotion is holy ground. And today, I want to walk with you through it. Not to bypass it, not to fix it, but to honor it. It's necessary. We cannot put it on the back burner. We cannot bury it. We cannot bypass it. We don't have to fix it. We are allowed to experience it. But most of all, we should honor it. Grief is not just sadness. It's not just tears. Grief is love with nowhere to go. Can you feel that? Grief is love with nowhere to go. It's this echo of something or of someone that we cherish so deeply. It is a reminder that we have loved. You see, grief is also a sacred portal. It is this beautiful portal that invites us into deeper embodiment, into deeper tenderness, and a deeper truth. In spiritual traditions across the world, grief is seen as a rite of passage, believe it or not. Because there is this process of the thinning of the veil and a time when the soul itself is being reshaped. And it's not just for the person who has left us, it's for us as well. But here is the thing, in our modern world, we are taught to hide it, we are taught to rush it, and we are taught to avoid it. Can you feel that? We're told you have to be strong, you have to move on, but here's the important part to remember. Grief doesn't follow a timeline. It follows the rhythm of your heart. And here's the caveat. The more deeply you love someone, the harder you grieve. The more deeply you love someone, the harder you grieve. I want to take a minute or two to just share with you some of the grief that I have experienced that has shaped me into the person that I am today. And maybe you'll hear your own reflection in my story. I'm going to go with something that is more recent before I dig back deeper. So the grief I want to share with you, and it was deep, was the deep grief I felt after my accident. When I lost the life I once had, the teacher I used to be, the woman I thought I was becoming. After my accident, I experienced loss in so many different ways. Yes, I lost a lot from the life I once had. I used to love reading. You can ask anybody who knows me, especially as my husband. I could read a novel in a day, and I loved it. And we had hundreds of novels in the house. Sometimes my husband said that we should turn our living room into a library or a bookstore because I owned that many novels. And after the accident, I could only read for 25 minutes and then my vision would be gone for the day. And not only that, I lost part of my short-term memory, which means that I could read something, and if I went back the next day to pick up that book and start reading, I would forget what I had read. And I actually had kept a notebook where I would write things down, but then I realized I was reading what I had written about what I had read. So that was a strain on my eyesight before I could get into the book again. And it became very frustrating for me. And then my accident also took away my ability to be with loud music, loud noises, and things of that nature. So going to loud music, movies, going to concerts, going out dancing, that was gone for me. I couldn't do that. And as somebody who was a rocker chick in the 80s and had her own band and used to be up there singing with a microphone, and the loudness of the guitars and the drums and the keyboards, that part was gone. In fact, when my daughter got married in 2023, I couldn't stay at the reception for very long because it was too loud. So I missed part of the celebration of her new portal of becoming a wife because I had to leave and go back to where I was staying. And that was hard. I lost the teacher that I used to be. I was a high school English teacher and I loved it. I loved teaching about literature, about Greek mythology, about some of the great pieces. I really did. And I loved my students. I loved my quirky 9th and 10th graders. I thought that they were amazing human beings. I loved their honesty. I loved their sweet faces. I loved the conversations that we had. But when your eyesight and your short-term memory are in question, you can't be the English teacher you used to be. You have to give that up. And it was something that I defined myself by. And I thought I would be a teacher until I retired one day. And that ended. That ended the day that car hit me. And there were so many layers that followed. There was the grief of changing friendships, the grief of isolation, and the grief of being misunderstood on so many different levels. People that I thought were my friends that I worked with, once I retired, I never heard from them again, and it hurt. And I realized that our friendship was a friendship of convenience. And that was hard. And so here I am, I'm at home. and it's COVID, and we can't gather in groups, and I am isolated, and I am in mourning, and I don't understand the why of why it's happening. And it was so hard. It was so hard to lose the friendships, to lose my career, and to feel isolated. It was so hard. And I was mad. I was so angry. I was resentful. I was resentful that it happened. I was resentful and angry at the person who caused this accident. And I was resentful that so many people just didn't seem to care about me anymore. And then there was the grief of being misunderstood because of my memory issues. Or I would misunderstand and not completely comprehend what somebody was saying. And that was hard because then I would answer them in a way that didn't make sense. And they would look at me with this quizzical look on their face. And I didn't know. I didn't understand why. So there was a lot I had to work through. There was so much I had to work through with that part of me. And it was so damn hard. It was so damn hard. And then, back in 1995, and this is where my voice will crack and who knows what's going to happen, but I lost my best friend, my dad. He was taken way too early. He had had an accident at work. He was in the hospital. I was going to visit him. I was taking him magazines that made sense to him. He, because of the pain of the injury and everything else and the stress on his heart, he ended up dying of a massive heart attack. And I didn't get to say goodbye. And losing my daddy was so hard. He had always been my biggest cheerleader, my best friend. He was so patient with me. And that person who had been such a huge part of my life was now gone. And you want to talk about being angry and bitter and resentful? Oh, that his death ripped me to the core. I did what I needed to do to get through his funeral, and then I went into a deep, dark depression. My daughter, who was a year old, would go down for a nap, and I would stare out our big picture window out into the street until her little voice woke me up. And I got nothing done. And every day I was further and further and further in that tunnel that I couldn't get out of. And I was lucky because my husband allowed me to grieve, and he tried to pick up the slack, but the poor man was working all day and then coming home and trying to take care of me and our daughter. I was a hot mess. I was a hot mess. I didn't want to be around people. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to talk on the phone. I didn't want to go outside. Here was my mom who needed me, and I was so deep in my grief that I couldn't be what she needed. Thank God my husband was there to be there. And then one day he said to me, maybe you need to see somebody about this. And I fought it at first. I didn't want to do it. Believe me, oh my gosh, the thought of that was embarrassing to me because, there for so many years was a stigma on going to therapy, but I did it because I knew I had to do it for my baby. I didn't want her to grow up with a mother that was that deeply entrenched in grief. I wanted to be present for her. I wanted to be present for my husband. And quite frankly, I wanted my life back. So I did the therapy thing, and it was actually really helpful. But it took such a long time to heal. And the one thing that my counselor, my therapist told me was that grief didn't have a timeline. And that nobody could tell me how to grieve. Nobody should tell me how to grieve. Nobody should tell me it was time to get over it. And believe me, I had people who told me to get over it because they didn't understand, because they had never lost a parent. And if you've ever lost a parent that you were so close to, then you know what I'm feeling, and you know what I felt, and you know what I was going through. And it's hard and it sucks. And it was so hard because after I had my daughter, I used to talk to my dad every day, and he would call on his lunch break and say, what new food did she have today? Did she learn any new words? And all he wanted to do, he was waiting so long for my daughter to learn to walk so that he could hold her little hand and walk with her down the street. And he never got to do that. But I remember that we were sitting at my mom's house one of the days after the viewing, and we saw my daughter walk across the floor, and her hands were outstretched in front of her, and there was nobody there. But I came to realize that she was walking to my dad, that he was there. And we laughed and we cried. We laughed because she was walking, and we cried because he wasn't there in body. And that was hard. And I remember thinking that my children would never really know their pop-up. And that hurt. And each loss that I've had throughout my life has required me to let go of something I didn't want to let go of. Whether it was an identity, a relationship, a part of my heart. And each one of those losses brought me to my knees. Each one brought me to my knees in a way that I didn't understand at the time. And something else that I didn't understand until I was further along in my healing when I lost my mom and my birth mother was that each one brought me closer to the divine. I was still working through my trauma when I lost my dad. Actually, I was ignoring my trauma when I lost my dad. And I was ignoring my trauma after my accident. But I was further along in my healing when I lost my mom and when I lost my birth mother. And although I grieved those losses, it didn't bring me to my knees. What it did was bring me closer to divine presence, to God. And that's when I started to see grief not as a punishment, but as a form of initiation in my life. It cracked my heart wide open in ways I had no idea it was going to. And from those cracks, the light of compassion poured in a way that I didn't even realize I needed. And it allows you to heal just a little faster. And it allows you to do it in a way that doesn't make you bitter and make you feel isolated. And that, my friends, is huge. Because grief changes who we are. It invites us to drop the masks that we wear. It softens us. It deepens our empathies. It awakens parts of us that were asleep. And most of all, it shows us what really matters. Because when you are grieving, you don't have time to worry about everything else. You don't worry about how you're shape-shifting or being a chameleon to fit in to every other situation, circumstance, or relationship, because you're broken open. And so many times our hard exteriors and the walls that we built up around our heart crumble when we're grieving. And that is beautiful because it softens us. And when it softens us, it deepens our empathy, because now we understand people better who are going through the same thing, and we can show up for them so fully without falling into our grief. See, there's a difference. Before I healed from my father's death, when somebody else would die, all of the emotions of his death would rise up in me. So I would be sitting with somebody, but I would be in my own grief again instead of being with them in theirs. And although I would hold them and try to listen, I was thinking about me instead of them, and what they were feeling and how they were feeling it and what they might need or not need from me. See, when it softened me and it opened me up to empathy, it changed everything. And it showed me that what matters most is how I show up for myself in this life and how I live my life. And as I turn the next page in the story that is me, how I write that next part of my story. And how I show up for myself and my husband and my grown children and my granddaughter and my friends. How I show up for my business. Because when you consciously walk with grief, you reclaim a part of you that was frozen in time. Did you hear that? When you walk with grief consciously, you reclaim a part of you that was frozen in time, a part of you that didn't get to move forward because you were so stuck in grief, so stuck, deeply embedded, entrenched in the goop. And it's like a part of your life stops because all you do is grieve and you don't remember how to be you. But when you walk with it consciously, you are able to grieve and still continue on. You are able to grieve and still experience joy. And you give your sorrow, your deep, deep sorrow, a voice. And when you do that, you can move it through your body. And as you move it through your body, you can release it. And when you release it, you move forward. And you can move it through your body, through tears, through sound, through journaling, through ceremony, through ritual, through simple presence. See, grief can become this beautiful river of healing. And you can see yourself in the healing. And when you can see yourself in the healing, then you can help others that are in that place. And when people see how you are moving through your grief, and what you are doing to help yourself process it, it gives them hope. And it says, okay, she had a huge loss or he had a huge loss in their life. But you know what? Look at how they are processing it. Look at what they are doing to work through it. Maybe I can do that too. And you become that beacon of hope. You become that lighthouse for another person. And that is such a gift. So if you are in grief right now, I want you to hear me. I want you to listen. Stop what you're doing and listen right now. There is absolutely nothing wrong with you. You are not broken. You are in this beautiful, sacred process. And there is a light, not at the end of the tunnel, but within that tunnel, there is light that will guide you. You don't have to be in the darkness of the sludge to process your grief. You are allowed to have light while you are doing it, to be your guide. And that light can come in the form of your angels, your spirit guides, ancestors, the person that you lost, the people around you. There is a light that shines in your tears. There is a light that shines in your longing. There is a light in your courage to feel. Just remember that you are not alone in this, and you do not have to be alone. And you will emerge from it. You will emerge. And when you do, you will be softer, stronger, and wiser, more than you ever were before. I want to thank you for being here in this tender space. I want you to know that if you are grieving, if you are in that process, I see you, I hear you, and I was you. And I'm sure at some point in my life again, I will be you. Because grief is a part of life. And in fact, I am recording this episode after dealing with some grief. And for some people, they may not understand this, but I grieved really hard the loss of Ozzy Osbourne at the end of July. And it was hard. It was a part of my teenage years, and his music was something that still resonated with me. And so I grieved him hard. And at sometimes I still am, but it's okay, because there is light in my tears and in my longing and my courage to feel. And I know I'm not alone, because I have a lot of other people who feel the same grief, and they are there with me, and we talk about it, and we blast his music, and life is great. So if this episode resonated, I invite you to sit with the journal prompts that are in the show notes and share this with someone who might need it. Somebody who is grieving, who can't get past whatever it is that has left their life. And I want you to always remember that your grief is sacred and that you are held by something that is greater and bigger than you. And until next time, I'm sending you love. I'm sending you healing. And I am sending you the softest of embraces.